I used to believe that if you loved someone enough, you could survive almost anything together. Arguments, financial problems, long-distance periods, even mistakes. But there is one thing I learned the hard way. You cannot build a future with someone who keeps testing how much disrespect you are willing to tolerate. My name is Daniel, and for 6 years, I thought my wife, Emily, was the person who understood me better than anyone else. We met when we were both working in the same city. She was confident, funny, and incredibly good at making people feel comfortable around her. I was quieter. I didn't like unnecessary drama. If something bothered me, I preferred to sit down and talk about it. Emily used to say that was one of the things she loved about me. She would tell her friends, "Daniel never loses his head." At the time, I thought she meant it as a compliment. I didn't realize that one day she would use that exact quality against me. It happened on our 6th wedding anniversary. Emily told me she had planned something special. She asked me to dress nicely and meet her at a restaurant across town. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a table near the window. She looked beautiful. She smiled when she saw me. "Happy anniversary," she said. I kissed her forehead. "Happy anniversary." For the first 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. We ordered food. We talked about work. We laughed about an embarrassing vacation we'd taken 2 years earlier. Then Emily suddenly said, "Daniel, I want to ask you something." I looked at her. "What?" She leaned forward. "Do you think you're the jealous type?" I laughed. "Where did that come from?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I'm just curious." I told her I trusted her. She smiled. But there was something strange about that smile. It wasn't warm. It looked almost like she was waiting for something. Then she said, "Sometimes I wonder if you actually care enough." That sentence stayed in my head. I asked her what she meant. She immediately changed the subject. I didn't know it then, but the real test had already started. About 40 minutes later, Emily said she needed to use the restroom. She picked up her phone and walked away. I watched her disappear around the corner. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hey Daniel, don't make a scene tonight." I stared at the screen. I didn't understand. Then another message arrived. "You deserve to know what's going on." Before I could respond, I saw a man walking toward our table. I recognized him immediately. It was Marcus, Emily's ex. I had met him once, years earlier. Emily had always described him as someone from her past. Someone who meant nothing anymore. She had told me their relationship ended long before we met. So why was he walking toward our anniversary dinner? Marcus stopped beside our table. He smiled. "Daniel." I looked at him. "Marcus." He pulled out the chair and sat down. I didn't invite him. He didn't seem to care. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "Emily didn't tell you I was coming?" I looked toward the hallway. "No." Marcus laughed. "Of course she didn't." I didn't say anything. He leaned back. "You know, Daniel, I've always wondered what kind of man she would end up with." I looked directly at him. "And?" He smiled. Apparently, someone very patient. There was something insulting about his tone. But I refused to give him what he wanted. I simply asked, "Why are you here?" Marcus looked toward the hallway. "She invited me." My heart sank. Not because I was jealous. Because suddenly the strange conversation we'd had earlier made sense. The jealousy question. The strange smile. The way she had kept checking her phone. It wasn't random. This was planned. And then Emily returned. She stopped when she saw Marcus sitting at our table. She put one hand over her mouth. "Oh my God." Marcus laughed. Emily looked at me. "Daniel, I can explain." I stared at her. Then I asked the simplest question possible. "Explain what?" She looked nervous. Marcus looked amused. Finally Emily said, "I wanted to see how you'd react." I didn't understand. "React to what?" She pointed toward Marcus. "I wanted to test you." I almost laughed. "You brought your ex to our anniversary dinner to test me?" She nodded. "I wanted to know if you were actually jealous." I looked at Marcus. Then back at my wife. And for the first time that night, I understood. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about control. She wanted to provoke me. She wanted me to lose my temper. She wanted to tell herself that my reaction proved I cared. But she had made one mistake. She had underestimated how much I noticed when I was quiet. I stood up. Emily immediately grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" "Outside." "Daniel, don't do this." I looked at her. "You invited your ex here." "I told you. It was a test." "Then congratulations." She looked confused. "Congratulations? Your test worked." Her face changed. She thought I was angry. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight Marcus. I wasn't going to give either of them a dramatic scene. I simply walked outside. A few minutes later, Emily followed me. She looked frustrated. I don't understand why you're acting like this. I stared at her. You embarrassed me on our anniversary. It was just a joke. No. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. That sentence hurt more than I expected. She had humiliated me in front of the man she once loved. And now she was calling my reaction dramatic. I asked, did you talk to Marcus before tonight? She hesitated, just for a second, but I noticed. Yes, she finally said. How long? Not long. How long, Emily? She sighed. A few weeks. My chest tightened. A few weeks? Nothing happened. I looked at her. You've been talking to your ex for weeks and didn't tell me. Because I knew you'd react like this. That was when I realized something. She wasn't hiding it because she knew I'd become jealous. She was hiding it because she knew I'd ask questions. And she didn't want questions. Then Marcus walked outside. He stood behind Emily. Can we stop pretending? Emily turned around. Marcus, go back inside. But Marcus didn't move. He looked at me. You deserve to know. Emily's face went pale. Don't. Marcus smiled. You brought me here, remember? I watched the two of them. And suddenly I had a strange feeling. Something was about to come out. Something much bigger than a jealousy test. Marcus looked at me. Daniel, she didn't invite me here just to make you jealous. Emily immediately said, stop. Marcus continued. She told me you were probably going to get angry. I said nothing. He looked at Emily. She told me you were controlling. My eyes moved toward my wife. Did you tell him that? Emily said, I was angry. Marcus continued. She also told me that your marriage was basically finished. Emily's face changed. Marcus. I finally asked, when did she tell you that? Marcus took out his phone. 3 weeks ago. He showed me the screen. I didn't take the phone. I didn't need to. I had already heard enough. Emily stepped closer to me. Daniel, listen to me. I held up my hand. Don't. She stopped. Marcus said, there's more. Emily turned toward him. Shut up. That was the first time I'd ever heard fear in her voice. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. I looked at Marcus. What more? He hesitated. Then he said, she told me she wanted to leave you. Silence. The restaurant noise suddenly seemed very far away. I looked at Emily. She didn't deny it. She just stared at the ground. I asked, when? She whispered, I don't know. How long have you been thinking about leaving? She didn't answer. I asked again, how long? Finally she said, months. Months. While I was planning vacations with her. While I was paying our bills. While I was telling people how lucky I was to have her. She had been planning an exit. But Marcus wasn't finished. He said, and she wanted me back. Emily turned toward him. That's not true. Marcus laughed. You said you'd leave him if I gave you another chance. I looked at my wife. She looked at me. And for the first time that night, she looked genuinely afraid. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't hit Marcus. I simply pulled out my phone. Emily noticed. What are you doing? Nothing. She stared at me. Daniel. I opened my camera. Not secretly. Right in front of them. I placed the phone on the table. Marcus looked at me. You're recording? Yes. Emily became furious. Turn that off. No. Daniel, this is private. I looked at her. So was our marriage. She went silent. I said, I've spent the entire evening listening to both of you explain what you think about me. Marcus crossed his arms. I continued. Now I want the truth. Emily started crying, but I didn't know whether the tears were real. She said, I never cheated on you. I nodded. Okay. She looked surprised. You believe me? No. She stared at me. Then why did you say okay? Because I'm letting you finish. She wiped her eyes. I was confused. Marcus interrupted. That's not what you told me. Emily looked at him. Please stop. Marcus shook his head. No. You wanted honesty tonight. He looked at me. She told me she still loved me. Emily whispered, Marcus. And she told me you were only staying together because you were afraid to start over. I looked at Emily. Did you say that? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Then something even stranger happened. Marcus suddenly looked uncomfortable. I asked him, why are you doing this? He looked at me. What? Why are you telling me everything? He hesitated. Then he said, because I found out she was telling both of us different stories. Emily immediately said, that's a lie. Marcus shook his head. You told me you were leaving him. Emily said nothing. Marcus continued. Then yesterday you told me you weren't sure. He looked at me. And tonight she told me you were going to be the problem. I finally understood. She wasn't testing my jealousy. She was testing which man she could control. We went back inside, but the anniversary dinner was over. There was no celebration anymore. Just 3 people sitting around a table with nothing left to hide. Emily finally admitted that she had been messaging Marcus for months. She said they met twice. She insisted nothing physical happened. I didn't know whether that was true. And honestly, at that point, it didn't matter. The betrayal wasn't only physical. It was emotional. She had shared private details about our marriage with someone she knew still had feelings for her. She had complained about me. She had discussed leaving me. And then she brought that person into our anniversary dinner to deliberately humiliate me. That was enough. I asked one final question. Why did you do this? Emily stared at me. I wanted to know if you cared. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You thought humiliating me would prove that I loved you? She started crying again. I thought you'd fight for me. I looked at her. Emily, I spent 6 years fighting for us. She whispered, not tonight. I shook my head. No. I stood up. Tonight I stopped fighting against something you had already decided to destroy. She grabbed my hand. Please don't leave. I looked down at her hand. Then at her face. For a moment, I remembered everything. Our first apartment. Our wedding. The vacations. The stupid jokes. The nights we'd stayed awake talking about our future. And then I remembered the last few months. The hidden phone. The unexplained messages. The sudden distance. The way she'd started criticizing everything I did. Maybe I had been blind. Or maybe I had simply trusted her. Either way, the result was the same. I gently pulled my hand away. I'm going home. She stood. I'm coming with you. No. Her face went blank. What? You should stay here. Daniel, please. I shook my head. Tonight, I need to be somewhere I don't have to wonder who's lying to me. Then I walked away. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room until almost 4 in the morning. I listened to the recording. Every word, every lie, every contradiction. I didn't listen because I wanted revenge. I listened because I needed to know whether I had imagined everything. I hadn't. The next morning, Emily sent me 11 messages. Please answer. I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Please come home. I didn't respond. Then she sent one final message. I still love you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. Love isn't supposed to require humiliation as proof. She called immediately. I didn't answer. Then Marcus sent me a message. I'm sorry for what happened last night. I replied, you were part of it. He said, I know. Then he sent something unexpected. A screenshot. It was a conversation between him and Emily from weeks earlier. In it, Emily had written, if Daniel gets jealous, I'll know he still wants me. I stared at that sentence. That was the entire plan. Not love, not trust, a test. She wanted to create a situation where I would become angry, then use my anger as proof that she still had power over me. But there was another message. Marcus had written, and if he doesn't? Emily replied, then I'll know it's over. I read that sentence 3 times. And suddenly everything became clear. She already knew our marriage was in trouble. The jealousy test wasn't designed to save it. It was designed to give her an excuse to end it. 2 days later, Emily came to the house. She looked exhausted. She sat across from me. I want to explain. I said, okay. She took a deep breath. I was unhappy. I nodded. You could have told me. I tried. No. You complained. That's different. She looked down. I didn't know how to leave. I stared at her. You could have simply said, I don't want this marriage anymore. Tears filled her eyes. I was scared. Of what? Of being alone. That answer hurt. Because suddenly I realized something. She hadn't destroyed our marriage because she hated me. She had destroyed it because she was afraid to be honest. She wanted another person waiting for her before she let me go. I said, you didn't need to be afraid of being alone. She looked at me. Then why did you do this? I answered, because you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. She started crying. Then she asked, is there any chance we can fix this? I looked at her for a long time. 6 years. That's a lot of memories. A lot of history. But sometimes history isn't enough. I said, I don't know. She looked relieved. Then I continued, but I know one thing. What? If we ever have a future, it won't be the marriage we had before. She nodded slowly. No more tests. No more hidden conversations. No more exes. No more manipulating each other's emotions. She nodded. Then I said something she wasn't expecting. And I'm not going to chase you. Her face changed. What do you mean? If you want this marriage, you have to decide that without testing me. She looked down. For the first time, there was no argument. No game. No manipulation. Just silence. A week passed. Emily moved to her sister's apartment. We began the separation process. I didn't post the recording online. I didn't send it to her friends. I didn't try to destroy her reputation. I didn't need revenge. The truth was already enough. Eventually Marcus stopped contacting me. Emily stopped messaging every day. And slowly, the anger disappeared. What remained was something much quieter. Acceptance. About 3 months later, Emily asked me to meet her at the same restaurant where everything had started. I almost didn't go, but I did. She was sitting at the same table. When she saw me, she smiled sadly. "Thank you for coming." I sat down. She looked different, not physically, just quieter. She said, "I finally understand what I did." I didn't say anything. I thought jealousy meant love. She paused. "I thought if you got angry, it meant I still mattered." I looked at her. "And now?" She smiled sadly. "Now I understand that if someone loves you, you shouldn't have to hurt them to prove it." That was the first thing she'd said that sounded completely honest. She asked me if I hated her. I shook my head. No. She looked surprised. "How?" "Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying anger." She nodded. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Could you ever forgive me?" I looked out the window. "I already have." Her eyes filled with tears. "But forgiveness doesn't always mean getting back together." She nodded. "I know." We sat quietly for a while. Then I stood. Emily looked at me. "Daniel." I stopped. "Yes?" She said, "I really am sorry." I believed her. And maybe that was enough. I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I had won. Because marriage isn't a competition. There was no winner that night. Only a lesson. And my lesson was simple. Never let someone convince you that accepting disrespect is proof of love. If someone truly loves you, they won't need to destroy your peace just to see if you care. They won't bring another person into your relationship to make you jealous. They won't create a test where the only way to pass is to lose your dignity. And most importantly, you don't have to scream to prove that you have been hurt. Sometimes the strongest response is to stay calm, listen carefully, and walk away when you finally understand the truth. Because when someone expects you to lose control, the last thing they expect is for you to remain calm. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't win my wife back. I didn't destroy her life. I didn't take revenge. I simply stopped participating in the game. And sometimes, walking away from the game is the greatest revenge of all.